Organizations downplay, number one, the fact that the answer lies within your people. It doesn't lie within the technology and or the consulting company that's your systems integrator. And they have the expertise to help you implement it. But what really we should be talking about is how do we engage our people? How do we make sure that they are communicated with? And how do we make sure that we're providing them with the skills, the knowledge, and the abilities to be able to handle the future of the work that's coming down the pipe?
Welcome to What If, So What, the podcast where we explore what's possible with digital and discover how to make it real in your business. I'm your host, Jim Hertzfeld, and we get shit done by asking digital leaders the right questions. What if, so what, and most importantly, now what? All right, with me today is Bradie Speller, who introduced me to the term socio-technical systems, and he's going to let us all know what that means today. Having a little fun with you, Bradie, but this is a man who's witnessed what I call the dawn of digital, and he's moved everything from records to laptops to trucks. But I'm going to let him tell us about it. Bradie, welcome to the podcast. In your own words, give us a little background on yourself.
Right. Hey, Jim, thanks for having me today. I really do appreciate you and the folks at Proficient for doing this. Just a quick thumbnail background on me. I mean, I'm from New York. I'm a native New Yorker. Went to school in the Midwest, and I've traveled pretty much all over the world. But, starting a family back in the day, I wanted to make sure that I had some sort of a real career. And I wound up going to Mars Group, M&M Mars, back in the 80s when the first computer, the first PC was introduced. I saw this guy named Ken, he was from Iran. And he's walking through the office of about 100 people with this box in his hand, right?
Yeah. What is that?
I see the box, and I was like, I walk up to him later, I say, hey, what's that you got in there? It looks pretty interesting. He said, you don't know about that. It's an IBM PC. I said, I shall know about it. Okay. And sure enough, he taught me everything there was to know about it. And I would stay up at night and take it apart and put it back together again. Next thing I know, the PCs, went from one computer on one guy's desk to computers on just about everybody's desk. But the problem was people didn't have any training. They didn't know how to use it. And so I took it upon myself to stay up at night. When I had two small kids, I'd be at the office until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, taking this thing apart, putting it back together again, understanding DOS, understanding assembler language. And the next thing I know, I got promoted to start teaching everybody in the company how to use PCs. And then later on, Macs came along because some people didn't like PC, they wanted a Mac.
Right.
So that's how my career got started in the technology world. And it's been a lot of fun. I could tell you a whole lot of stories about that stuff.
I remember some of those days myself. And there was something about that era, like you said, it's tangible. You unboxed it, you could take it apart. Like now nothing comes apart, right? The phone's locked up, the laptop's locked up. If it goes bad, you get a new one, right? So, there was a lot of, and the tinkering, and of course, there's nothing like hands-on learning. Let's be honest, but that's not everybody can do that. But we were kind of getting prep for this, Bradie. You had a great question you posed, kind of in line with the show here. Mm-hmm. What if you didn't need people to make the technology work? So you were telling that story. I was imagining, what if we put one of these computers on every desk, and then we didn't need to hire the people to come in and do the work anymore. I think we still have this pipe dream, right? So the answer is you can't do that. So you've had this focus on training, and which I think is really what I call organizational development, and some might call it, change management. Yeah. It's so somebody gets an idea and then they spend all this money, and the computers show up and the software shows up, but something has to make it come together. I mean, that's kind of been your world, right? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So I'll take you back a little bit further, Jim, into that, a roundabout way of answering that question, because I think it's important to understand the context of the answer. Okay. At Mars, and this was in the mid 80s, mentally, I'm pretty much out of college, first big job I had, stayed there for about 10 years. And what wound up happening is I learned the PCs well enough and started teaching everybody WordPerfect, Lotus 1-2-3. Okay.
Yeah,
and then there was a couple other programs. Remember, that goes all the way back, right? To the beginning. And the fact that people were still using, the companies were still using big mainframe computers, but the power of computing was not where it is today. But what was beginning to happen was this transition from this big air-conditioned room with the false floors of all this supercomputing going on with punch cards and all that kind of stuff was now being transitioned into the hands of the everyday person who knew how to use the computer. So my teaching everybody at Mars how to use it, and then the company basically saying, okay, well, if you're going to get promoted into the IT group, you need to learn Fortran, Pascal, and some other language. I was like, you don't need that, guys. That's not where things are going. It's going in a completely different direction. And I wound up leaving that company in '89. But what wound up happening is I got picked up by a couple of buddies of mine who were at Motown Records after Berry Gordy sold Motown. Berry Gordy sold Motown Records for, I think, $60 or $61 million. The MCA Records and Boston Ventures Group. And my two buddies were there, and they were like, okay, we need computers in this place. And there's only one guy in Los Angeles that we know that knows how to do this stuff. So I get a phone call. Next thing I know, I'm at Motown Records. We're buying Apple computers for everybody in the company, from the president on down, right? The key is you could put a computer on somebody's desk, but if you don't train them how to use it, and if you don't teach them the benefits and the blessings that they can get from the utilization of the technology, what you're winding up doing is you're saying, yeah, we got all this great technology, but nobody knows how to use it. Nobody really knows how to get out of it what's possible, what the possibilities are. So at the end of the day, you can buy the greatest technology. You can put SAP in, you can put in Workday, you can put in Oracle Cloud, you can implement any of the top big box technology software solutions out there to run your business. But it's the people who run the business.
Yep.
And without that connectivity between your people and your technologies, or the social and the technical aspects of it.
There we go.
Okay, now we're going to talk about socio-technical systems. Back in the day when I was coming through, that's what I learned about socio-technical systems from a consultant guy by the name of Robert D. Philippus. He had a company called RTD out of Chicago. Anyway, he took me under his wing and taught me pretty much everything I know about organizational development. But the first thing I got introduced to was this term called socio-technical systems. And the theory is basically, it's an approach to complex organizational work design that recognizes the interaction between people and technology in the workplace. So it's interrelated. The social and the technical aspects of an organization, they're interrelated. They're not part and parcel, or separate. And so that term actually is related to how human beings and human relations interact with technical objects. And how do you go about the process in a large, complex organization with many different business processes, get that stuff to harmonize, to work together so that you can move the company forward in whatever direction you want to go in, whether it's market share, whether it's revenue, whether it's just improving your business processes, becoming more efficient, et cetera. So that's how I got started in now what's called organizational development. And then it morphed into change management.
Okay. So that's the lineage.
That's the lineage. That's the history.
You saw it. Yeah. And you saw it from the beginning.
Sure did.
And I'm trying to put in a Motown song reference, and it's just escaping me at the moment, but I'm trying. But
the tears of a clown.
That's where I was going, but it didn't seem appropriate. All right, here's the clown. Okay, the clown in this case, Bradie, is the guy who thinks they can it's all technology, right? Those whose tears we're talking about. We all see this. We all know, like when a team is working together, you just know it, right? Things click. We finish each other's sentences. You anticipate 3 or 4 moves ahead of time. And that's, to me, that's nirvana. I love seeing that. There's moments I have with my team or I see with project teams when it all just kind of clicks. But I think there's still that concept out there. We're going to buy technology and it's technology is the answer. Like, why, again, the tears of that clown, like, why do people enamored by the technology as much as they are? Because I think sometimes the change management element is forgotten, right?
Oh, no question about it. And Jen, throughout the course of my career, it has been what I would call truly a pushing a boulder up a hill by yourself. Yeah. Unless you're in a really enlightened organization that understands the value of providing your people with the support, with the intellect, with the
Mhm.
tools, and with the resources that they need to be able to understand the application of this technology and then be able to utilize it for what it was originally intended for. So let me give you an example. Most companies that are going to spend $100 million, which is the typical price tag on a big box implementation over the course of a
Right.
year or 2 years, they're more focused on the data, which they need to be, you got to have clean data.
Sure.
They're more focused on the tools and what the tools can do, the possibility of the tools itself. And the original business case, when they developed the business case at the executive leadership level or with the layer underneath that, which are the guys or girls that are responsible for the business units, they typically want to see things work better in their division for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's their job. Number two, they want to reduce cost. Number three, they want to increase
that a lot.
productivity. Exactly. And in some cases, reducing cost might mean reducing heads. Right?
Right.
And so
Right.
they're measured on that. Well, the ability or the propensity, is the word I want to use, propensity for getting enamored with the technology happens to be just a thing. It's like a shiny object. People have a tendency to move towards the shiny object. And that shiny object becomes the object of desire. This is what we like. This is what we want. This thing, we've been sold on the fact that this technology will help us save $3 billion in the next 5 years. Great business case. Got it. No problem. The problem is people who have been doing a job for any number of years, and the most longer term companies that have been around 30, 40, 50, 60 years, the people are entrenched in the way that they do things, especially if the technology hasn't kept up, if you haven't kept up.
Yeah.
And typically when you introduce change within an organization, people will normally resist because you haven't explained to them why it's important you're changing. Why are we doing this? Why are you doing this to us is more. That's really what they're saying to you. They're not saying, why are you doing this? They're saying, why are you doing this to us? Okay. So unless companies that are enlightened, or the management team or the leadership teams are enlightened around the fact that your people are your greatest asset, don't just give me the lip service. You can do lip service all day long. Okay. But all day long lip service does not a problem solved get. Your people who do the work can tell you better than anybody else on the planet and better than even AI what the problem is and how to fix it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought where we were going to go is the kind of what's in it for me, but that question, like, what are you doing to me? Why are you doing this to me? I've never heard it. I've never heard it put that way. And it reveals a lot to me. I think many of us, we've been in the room where there's an announcement, you're in a meeting, you're out on the shop floor, wherever, and you got that look. That's what they're saying. They're looking at you, but that's a big reveal, Bradie. That is really powerful. It's like, why are you doing this to me?
Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to us? Okay.
Yeah, that's what you got to get around. That's maybe the part of the essence of change is like, you got to address that concern might be out there. And I don't need to steal what you're going to say, but I think what you're saying is you got to get in front of that, right? You got to anticipate that.
You better anticipate. As a matter of fact, before you ever announce a major change initiative, you need to survey your people. You need to talk to them and engage them in the process early on. This is what we mean by stakeholder engagement around change management. Stakeholder engagement does not come after you've decided you're going to spend $100 million and you're going to do change to the organization.
Yeah.
Stakeholder engagement means that, hey, Joey, Mary, Sue, Bob, Fred, calling a meeting here. This is what the company's thinking about. Okay. Here's what we're looking at. Here's the problems that you guys have seen for years. Let's document what you see. And then let's talk about it and figure out what is the best way to be able to solve that problem. Do you know of any tools or technologies that we may be able to look at as we're thinking about how do we get better at what we do? Because in that way, then what you're doing is you're giving them the ownership of it. Okay. And so you're answering the question with them. What's in it for me? So instead of them saying, why are you doing this to me? You're saying, this is what's in it for you, but I need you to tell me what you need.
Yeah.
If companies would just spend the time on the front end instead of sitting in the smoke-filled ivory tower figuring out how well they can spend $100 million of the company money because we see the market conditions changing and we don't know. We just got to have this new shiny object. Talk to your freaking people.
It's a cornerstone of empathy. That's something we talk about a lot about, Bradie. Like you need empathy with your customers and you need it with your employees, right? You need it with your teams, you need it with your partners. Like, there's this movie I like called Up in the Air. I think we meet, and I think
you mentioned it to me. I looked it up. I've got it.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. That's kind of like where they have to go out and, they have to get out in the field. And I love that concept. I work at a company years ago and they introduced me to the Japanese term called the Gemba. That's where you got to go. You got to go to the Gemba. And the Gemba is like where the real work happens, right? That's on my mind a lot. So yeah, another great empathy story, but great questions. So they get enamored. How fast can we spend this money or how much can we spend? That's not hard to do. But how do you get the most out of it? What do you think, when you've been in these situations with executives or with project sponsors, or maybe you've been at the other end of that look on that guy's, why are you doing this to me situation? I mean, what have you seen that works? Like aside from, maybe taking some really key steps here, but like there may be more to it, right? Because I imagine you've got to do a lot of convincing. What do you think are some things that really work for organizations that buy into what you're saying, right? And they want to do the right thing. Like, what are some, would you say is sort of the high value tricks of the trade that you see employed?
Jim, what I've seen over the years, it goes a little something like this. When the water cooler is where the action is.
Yeah.
Okay, the water cooler could be the cafeteria. It could be the bar at the end of the day for happy hour. Okay, it could be any one of those places.
Now it's in Snapchat, by the way. It's in
right. Yeah, it could be a Snapchat too, or it could be online and social media. It's like they don't know what the heck they're doing, So what I will say is I think that organizations downplay, number one, the fact that the answer lies within your people. It doesn't lie within the technology and or the consulting company that's your systems integrator. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the expertise to help you implement it. But what really we should be talking about is how do we engage our people? How do we make sure that they are communicated with? And how do we make sure that we're providing them with the skills, the knowledge, and the abilities to be able to handle the future of the work that's coming down the pipe? Right? Knowledge, skills, and abilities. So ProSci is one of the research companies around change management. Their methodology talks more about you call it ADKAR, which is making sure that people are aware. We're aware of the change and then creating the desire for change. So how do you create the desire for change? You talk to people about how much better or how much you think it can be better for them by doing their jobs in a different way, new ways of working. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. By allowing them to take the power and stop making things so hard and make it a little bit easier so that they can spend time on things that are real problems within the organization instead of being focused on the day-to-day grind of, how to, I just keep dealing with the same problem year after year after year after year, right? And then so the K part of their formula has to do with knowledge, okay? Providing people with the knowledge and the abilities. That's the A's. And so knowledge and then abilities, and then making sure that it's sustainable, or it's you're making sure that you've got people, once you train them, you communicate with them, and you provide them the platform that they're engaged and involved in, is that change is being done with them and not to them. You really wind up with a much better scenario in terms of how management can really reap the benefits of their people being engaged in these projects. So they can overcome those challenges by simply making sure that when the project teams are being formed, because simply you can't involve everybody, because then you get into a room of 100 people, is death by consensus. It's not going to be the case.
Right.
My approach has always been small groups, focus groups, allowing people the opportunity to vent, number one, okay?
Yeah.
Then we change the vent and listen. Because the people who you think are going to be the biggest resistors are probably the people with the most knowledge And they may be what may appear to be resistance is really more of, you need to listen to me because I know how things work. I may not want to see a change, but if you were to ask me, then I might be able to make it easier for you. But typically what top management does, we're the geniuses in the room, we're the smartest persons in the room, and our way is going to be the highway. And if you don't like the highway, go get another highway. It's not a solution, man. It's not a solution, And that's the human, though. You use the word empathy, which I think is absolutely critical. The empathetic part of change management really has to do with engaging your people, listening, feeding back, giving them the vision. If you don't have a vision, don't talk to them. Wait till you get a clear vision, or let them help shape the vision. So the CEO and the C-suite are supposed to have the vision for the company, what direction they want to go in, and how do you get people all into the boat or road together instead of everybody looking out for themselves? That's a big deal.
Man, that's a lot. I mean, you give me some things I never heard of, and I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know, I have probably 5 or 6 internal projects going on right now, and I kind of want to put them all on pause until I get through this checklist. I'm serious. Like this is good. I'm trying to check myself here before I go off the rails. This is great. This is great advice, Bradie, and you earned it. You've been there. You've seen what's worked and what hasn't worked.
Yeah, Jim, it's been a tough road to hoe, but it's been a rewarding one because I was in on this thing. Really, it's just pretty much the very beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. And I saw it back in the 80s. And the funny thing about it, and just a caveat, I was working on my master's degree. I finished it in 87, but my master's degree was done on the case study of the change and transformation effort that we were doing at Mars at that time.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
If you go into the archive somewhere online there, you'll see a thing called a case study in organizational development and plan change by Bradie Speller, and it was on Calcan Foods.
Hey, kids are using that with generative AI to get their thesis done today, I'm sure.
So am I.
You're giving us a lot to think about. I'm also thinking, that there's your everyday change, there's so many applications for this, right? In the business world, everyday change. I've got to get my team to change. I've got a big project. I've got a large digital transformation. Maybe I got just a small release. Right? I've got one feature that's going to get out there and change the world. But I'm thinking about, how do you how do you use this in your school? How do you use this in your church? How do you use this, in your softball league this summer? We're all humans. We said at the beginning, it's all about people. At the end of the day, people have to relate to each other. People have to make it happen. So, Bradie, speaking of changes, we're gonna end it. We're gonna end it here. I think this is just the beginning. Really appreciate you coming on. This is great advice. I was been really excited to hear this because I know you've got just years of wisdom up there. So I really appreciate you sharing with us today.
Jim, I want to thank you and the folks at Proficient for the opportunity to be able to speak on this particular subject. It's a passion of mine for sure.
I can tell.
Other things that I've got going on in my life, but it's been almost like a mission for me to make sure that people understand what change management is all about. And it's not just a word, it truly is a method. And it's a method where people can really grow and really develop and stay relevant in their jobs, particularly with the advent of everything that's changing at the pace that's changing today. So just make sure you're bringing people along.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bradie.
You bet. Thanks, Jim.
You have a good one.
You too.
You've been listening to What If, So What, a digital strategy podcast from Proficient with Jim Hertzfeld. We want to thank our Proficient colleagues J.D. Norman and Rick Bauer for our music. Subscribe to the podcast and don't miss a single episode. You can find this season along with show notes at proficient.com. Thanks for listening.